Meta has begun to block some Canadian users from accessing or posting news content on its platforms. The social media giant, which owns Facebook and Instagram, made the move in response to the federal government's Bill C-18. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre raised concerns that the bill is doing more harm than good.
Justin Trudeau's total incompetence and his attempt to censor the internet are now hurting our media outlets. I don't believe that either big tech or big government should censor what people see and say online.
Bill C-18, known as the Online News Act, would require tech giants to pay Canadian publishers for linking to or repurposing their content online. It could pass the Senate as soon as this month. Pablo Rodriguez is the Minister of Canadian Heritage. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How do you respond to this move by Meta?
Well, I see it as a threat. I see it as intimidation. You have a big, tech giant, very rich, very powerful, big lawyers coming to a country, sovereign country, Canada, and telling the lawmakers and senators, MPs, I don't like what you're doing. If you don't do what I do, what I like, I'm pulling out of the country. And I find that unacceptable.
You see it as a threat. They say it as a business decision to protect themselves from having to pay hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, if this harms the ability of Canadian media companies to function and be distributed and be seen, how do you fight this?
Well, by common sense. The bill is common sense. I think it's a good consensus. It's a very simple bill. David, we spoke about it before. You put tech media on one side, you put the media companies and journalists on the other side, and they come to a fair deal. Because what you guys are doing, what you personally are doing now, the people in the room with you, the technical people, whoever's working in that building and other media across the country, what you guys are doing has a value. And the tech giants have to recognize that because they're making a lot of money out of that. And the only thing we're asking is pay your fair share, just compensate media outlets in a fair way, and it's good for everyone.
I agree that the work we do has a value, but also their platforms allow us to reach an audience, right? We use Facebook, we use Instagram to reach people, to help
Absolutely.
us. And if this goes through and Meta follows through on its threat, we're going to lose access to those audiences. So how is this a helpful thing for Canadian media?
Well, first of all, they have to make that business decision, and they're making a lot of money in Canada, and they would have to justify why they do that. And second, they have a lot of deals with a lot of news media outlets across the country. What would happen to those deals? I think we can come to a fair deal. We can talk to each other. I always said it, and they know it. My door is always open. They have my cell phone. They know how to reach me and my staff and at any time. So we're ready to discuss, ready to negotiate, but we'll never negotiate or accept something under threat.
But what would you even say to them, Minister, if they did call you? Because they seem content and want to sign their one-off deals with specific publishers like they have with the Globe and Mail, for example, and other media outlets. They don't want to be part of this regime that you are pushing through. So it seems from my perch that either they sign up completely with what you're doing in this legislation or they're going to pull out entirely. Where is the middle ground in this?
Well, I think the bill is a middle ground. I think it's fair, and also the important thing here, David, it's market based, right? Government has nothing to do with that. Very important for me from the day one as minister. I said I don't want to have anything to do, no decision to make. This has to be a negotiation, market based negotiation between the tech and the media across the country, and I think that what they negotiate is reasonable. I also want, and this is very important, that small media outlet across the country have a fair shot, so they're allowed to regroup and negotiate collectively with the big tech. They've done it in Australia, and it's working. And Meta over there threatened to pull out. They actually did. They pulled out for about a week, and then they came back. We'll see what happens here.
You've described this as middle ground. They don't see it that way. And we heard at the Senate this week that the committee studying this, Brian Miles, who's with Le Devoir, said they get 40% of their traffic from Google and 30% from social media. And if Google and Facebook go through with this, they will suffer, he says, because direct traffic is less than 20%. The Globe and Mail CEO, Philip Crawley, told senators if Facebook pulls out, millions of dollars go away. Millions of dollars go away, and that's a lot in the newspaper world. I mean, I know you're trying to help. You say you're trying to help newspapers and media organizations. This would not help if they follow through, if they're provoked by your legislation.
But that's exactly what they're trying to do through their threat. They want you to repeat what they're saying. and in a way scare people and scare politicians too, because that's what they're trying to do. They want to intimidate MPs, they want to intimidate senators, especially senators, because the bill is there at this moment. And when I want to thank the senators for all the work they're doing, and I commend them for their strength, their courage, and for moving forward. But basically, that's what they're trying to do, David, is that to try and campaign through media, directly and indirectly, changing the decisions from their elected officials, from senators, and I find that unacceptable. And it's not going to work.
Okay, so there's between now and I guess what the end of June is what we're looking for when this will pass, right? And we will get royal assent.
Hopefully,
no, go ahead.
Up to the Senate. I cannot speak for the Senate. But things are going well. Good discussions in committee. Lots of support from different parties. Hopefully before the end of June. Yes.
Okay, so the countdown is ticking to where we find out whether Meta and Google are bluffing or whether this is actually a promise and a threat on which they intend to follow through. You say they can call you and have a conversation. Are you going?
Absolutely, and they know that.
But will you reach out to them? Will you try to set something up? Will you try to find that middle ground between now and the implementation of these changes?
Well, they have to say what the middle ground would be. I find that the bill that is a good compromise. It's very simple, actually. I don't know how much you can change a bill that is so simple. You put a table in the middle, you bring the tech giants on one side, they meet on the other side, they negotiate, they come to a fair deal, and that's it. So I don't know how much simpler a bill can be. Well,
their argument is that the payment they could have to make to Canadian media companies is uncapped. And that as more and more content proliferates their platform, the bill they have to pay goes up. And in a lot of cases, it would be the media posting, for example, on Facebook, and they argue it's unfair to them. Do you not agree with that assessment?
They are huge companies. They know how to make money. They keep making money. I'm happy for them, but they're making a lot of money using news content without paying anything. And that's not fair. And because of that, we've seen around 500 newsrooms close across the country. You know, print, radio, television, big or small, in big cities, in regions. That's bad for our democracy, extremely bad for our democracy. We have to reinforce independent, neutral, non-partisan professional journalism. And C18 is not the answer to everything, but it's part of the answer to that.
But if you listen to the people who run Le Devoir, you listen to the people who run the Globe and Mail, if you push ahead with C18 and they push ahead and make good on their threats, it sounds like a lot more journalists could lose their jobs.
That's the intent of the bill is quite the opposite. And I think we can get there by discussing and moving forward. But again, we've seen this happening elsewhere. And actually, Meta is doing the same threats in California, because California is always moving in the same direction as Canada. Mm-hmm. There's discussions in Washington from both sides of the House. Why? Because there's no regulation. It's a bit the far west at this moment, the Wild West, where there's no regulations. Big tech do whatever they want, and that's not how our society works.
Okay, I want to switch gears for just a second and skate out on some thin ice for me, I guess, because you announced yesterday that Catherine Tate will keep her job as president of CEO of CBC Radio Canada for another 18 months. Why extend Miss Tate and not look for a replacement for her? Because 18 months is not a full-term extension. Why did you make this decision rather than change the leadership of this company?
It's not a full extension, and we both agreed on that. And I think it's a perfect solution for both of us, because what we're looking is we're actually in a transition. So C11 came in, sorry, David, came in recently. It's going to have a full effect in about a year and a half from now. C11, C18 is coming in. We're reviewing the mandate of CBC Radio Canada. So we'll see what type of leader we need at that moment in about a year and a half. In the meantime, Catherine has graciously accepted to stay with us and lead CBC to that moment. She has a lot of accomplishments. She's had a lot of competence and talent. She loves the institution, and I really trust her to bring us through that transition.
You would be bringing a transition in the leadership of the CBC right up into the middle or the cusp of a federal election based on the confidence and supply agreement. Is it a good idea to have the leadership in the future of the company potentially in the middle of that?
As far as I'm concerned, David, next election is October 2025.
Right. Okay. Well, on that, Catherine Tate has veered into the political arena. She's had some very public disagreements with Pierre Poilievre, for example. Is that something you considered when choosing that she should stay on to lead the CBC?
I considered everything, and that's my job, and I did. But Pierre Poilievre would like me to tell the CBC boss what to say or not what to say, and that's not my job. If he wants to try to control media, that's his problem. I would never do that.
Okay, Heritage Minister Pablo Rodriguez, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.